Many thanks to Fellow Extraction Squad, One Original DayZ servers, Clash of servers, Sgt. Pepper servers, Sea of Tools Cloud, Dallas, the Struggle Community, the Karma Crew servers, Dots, Designful, and Friendly, a DayZ podcast for making this video possible. The DayZ devs have just dropped a sneak peek stream showcasing the soon-to-ship DayZ Update 1.28, otherwise known as the Weapon Handling patch, so here's a stacked summary showing the spiciest stuff shown on the stream. The devs started the stream in a regular fashion, giving themselves a healthy dose of wound infection within the first 2 minutes and then organically finding the new items added this patch in the first building that they loot. In this stream's case, it was the PM73 rack conveniently spawning with a few mags next to it, so the PM73 rack is confirmed to be back in DayZ, now known as the Rack 37. This weapon is a wartime era Polish SMG, has a 15 and 25 round mag firing 380 ammo, spawning in police locations and cannot be fired without a magazine. I'll compare it to the Scorpion when I get my hands on this. 3 new optics were added in this patch. The first one is a variant of the PSO, which is 6 times magnification. It's obviously going to be the best PSO for this reason. The other ones are 4 times, but it's also going to be the rarest as said by the devs, and it attaches to all weapons that accept PSO optics, so the VSD, the AKs and whatnot. A new variable zoom mil-dot optic has been added, which is said to attach to all NATO weapons, so the M4, the DMR and thankfully the SV98 or VS89 if you know it as that, which is a meta shifting addition to optics as it's a 10 times magnification optic, making the SV98 one of the best weapons in the game now if this patch has no major changes to damage or other stats, but we don't know how rare this optic is going to be yet. The third optic is a Sportman Optic, which has been added to, I guess, hunting locations, which is 2 times magnification and attaches to all weapons that accept the hunting optic, with the hunting optic now being more rare in this patch, as suggested by the devs. Hunting optics can now have cracked reticles too when they're damaged, so when they're damaged or lower, so badly damaged or damaged, but all cracks are repairable with electronic repair kits as confirmed on stream, as they did use one. Night vision goggles, the rangefinder and binoculars can also have cracked glass too, and it's also said that ruined optical devices and attachments, so optics for weapons, will be unusable when ruined, so I'm guessing that they're going to be impossible to look through due to the cracks on the reticle. The rangefinder has been updated too. The HUD has been much improved, as you can see here. Maybe people will prefer the old version, but this version gives us more stats, and I'll see what these stats can do for us in the future. Weapon raising has been changed, as you can see here from a developer video on the stream. This is what they showed us, which will make weapon handling far more forgiving, adding a dynamic range where the weapon will tuck into the side of the character if you're too close to a surface or wall, giving us plenty of warning when we are going to raise our weapon, with weapons still being fireable when they're tucked into the side of the character like this. This looks like it will make shorter weapons superior in close quarters due to some of them, namely handguns, not raising at all, which gives us a way to deal with Zeds and players that are far too close to us. You can switch to a handgun and you can shoot that way instead. They also said that recoil has been increased on some weapons, and there's been some changes to sway and accuracy of some weapons too, with general weapon handling changes being focused on balancing weapons in DayZ, but they did state that damage stats were not going to be changed. These recoil changes may include a complete rebalance of assault rifles, making it much harder to control during full auto fire. They didn't say anything about that, but it could be the case that they're increasing recoil in order to bring assault rifles back down to a level where they're more balanced with other weapons in the game, because they are super powerful compared to others. But until we see the numbers, this is just an assumption. What we do know though is that the Mosin has new sound effects for firing and reloading, as heard here, which is a continuation of the weapon sound changes we got last patch to SMGs, but with this patch they said a huge amount of firearms had their sounds changed, so it's going to be more weapons than last patch, including high-end rifles such as a VSD and also automatic weapons. A whole bunch of dynamic events can now be found on Sakau, including helicopter crash sites, which I guess will work the same as other maps, which will predominantly spawn on the south of Sakau. We don't know exactly where these will spawn yet, and we didn't see them go to any islands, so we didn't see any helicopter crashes on islands. It was the main island only they were on, but we do know that they're not going to be positioned near player spawn points. There's also a first ever dynamic event in water, a military boat spawning along the coast in Sakau. Looking at this one here, they found an M16 and a plate carrier here, hinting that these are going to spawn some pretty good high tier goodies. You will need to get wet to get onto these though, as you need to swim and then climb onto the boat. And there's also a civilian version of this dynamic event which spawns lesser gear, and it looks like this medium sized fishing boat here. These boats are not drivable and are only going to be found on Sakau, and I guess all new dynamic events this patch will be Sakau exclusive, for now at least, as it was confirmed that Chernarus has no new dynamic events. The final dynamic event on Sakau is the ambulance, which spawns medical gear and I guess works the same as police situations, randomly spawning with infected around them. There were no infected during the stream, but there will be when it's fully released, and perhaps a few cars, implying that the ambulance was responding to a call out or something. A hidden dynamic event called the tire fire was added to the game files, but we didn't get confirmation of whether or not this is actually a dynamic event, and nor did we see one on the stream. It was said that the fundamentals of vehicles have changed, focusing on desync issues, with the main goal being not to blow up and to have vehicles be less floaty and hopefully less glitchy. They're looking for feedback and will launch a special vehicle testing server during experimental, which will spawn a lot more vehicles than normal to see how they perform, so players can give their feedback before 1.28 is fully released. This code is coming from Reforger, so this could be promising. This could be the end, or mostly the end, of glitchy vehicles in DayZ. They also reduce the volume of vehicles when you're inside it or when you're stood right next to it, making them much quieter for players nearby, but louder for players at a distance. A lot like how boat sounds were changed in the last patch, I can imagine, which resulted in boats being heard at 350 meters away instead of 125, so perhaps other players will hear your vehicle 3 times further away when you're driving it. Hot springs will now erupt occasionally in this patch. The code for this was in the game files for a while, but we now have it fully implemented on Sakau. But at the time I saw this code, it damaged players when erupting and produces more heat. Though the devs didn't get close enough to take damage, I believe these will cause more damage to players, so be careful out there. You'll get a bit of warning when these are about to explode. And even added water droplets and a big splash after an eruption happens. This is a fantastic touch. They didn't have to do this. Much respect. And finally, for what we saw on the stream, they added ambient sounds to caves, such as an echoey atmosphere and swirling winds. 1.28 is looking to be a huge patch, and there is some really decent changes and additions in here. I am loving this patch, especially with the optics. 3 new optics in one patch is massive, and the SV98 and DMR viability is absolutely through the roof right now. A 10 times variable zoom optic for these weapons is going to make them monsters. I was also not expecting this many dynamic events, with the tire fire, if it truly is a dynamic event, being shown in this video here if you do want to learn more before this patch is released. 1.28 is going to be released on experimental on the 15th of April, so Tuesday, and will only be on PC and Xbox from then until it's available across all platforms, likely 4 to 6 weeks later. Let me know your take on these changes and what your favourite additions are. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.